All right, joining me now, very excited to have this gentleman on the show. He is the head coach of the Oklahoma State Cowboys men's basketball program. Obviously a surreal, wild last 10 days, 2 weeks for the program itself. And he's here to really explain what's going on and really, frankly, what people need to know about what's going on with Oklahoma State. Mike Boynton is joining me via Zoom. Coach, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay, man. And you say a couple of weeks. It's actually been several months now of just stuff. You know, we were actually one of the final teams to play during the college basketball season.
Yep.
That ended abruptly. We had a pretty exciting conference tournament game against Iowa State the Wednesday night before basically what the Thursday became the end of college basketball season. So that's kind of where this all started. It's been, several challenging moments since then.
Absolutely. And so, let's just get into all this. And, at some point, maybe we'll even dip into the COVID stuff. But, I guess this is what I want to do. This is what I want to do. Usually, as you get to know me, Coach, I'm a fun, loose guy. I like to have fun. I like to keep it light. But obviously for your program right now, as you said, it's been a surreal 2, 3, 4 months. But, the last week has been just a lot. And so what I want to do is let you put in your own words, one, what the last couple weeks was like, but two, more importantly, I want you to put in words what the NCAA has found your program guilty of, because it's one thing for me to say it. It's one thing to read it in a press release, but it's another thing to hear the people that live it. And as I told you kind of off air, my personal opinion, you may disagree. I think when you're a casual college basketball fan, you don't have time to follow 7, 8, 9, 10 NCAA cases, and you kind of just lump them all together. And so obviously I know it hasn't been a fun week for you, but I really want you to inform my audience and anybody that might be tuning in exactly what your program has been found guilty of, and really where things are right now.
Well, I'll just start with, we obviously know we've been going through this investigation for some time. This all was triggered by the federal indictments that were landed in September 2017, when I was about 5 months into being a head coach at Oklahoma State. Caught everybody by surprise what was unearthed on that day, the almost threatening nature of the press conference that the Southern District
playbook
New York had, really kind of made everybody kind of start scratching their head, like, what is this all about? And obviously because we had a guy on staff who had been arrested that day, we became part of the forefront of that conversation. And that led to a lot of questions being asked of me, of my staff, our players, and rightfully so, right? It was a kind of a shocking moment, a really unfortunate turn of events. But what really came of it was an investigation at 3 levels. One, the federal government was doing their own and had been doing one for a couple of years. The NCAA obviously had to figure out, because of their jurisdiction on college athletics, and then on the university level. And I welcomed every conversation, every interview, never hid from turning in any documents that I had or any conversations that I was aware of or been involved in, and did the same for every player and staff member in our program. And, what we found was this is a very isolated incident as it relates to Oklahoma State. So fast forward, what we had to do subsequently, because this had to play out in federal court for a while. And the NCAA was kind of trying to figure out where they could fit their investigation in. In the meantime, I was still trying to run this program and trying to, with this cloud over our head of our involvement and how many people were going to be paying consequences for this. The investigation on all 3 levels showed clearly that no one else was involved in this situation. Certainly not me, certainly not any other staff members here, and no players certainly were involved either. and the university had some comfort knowing that they could move forward with me as the head coach. And my cooperation would continue throughout the rest of the processes. The NCAA, therefore, did the same thing. I never, had to go up to New York and interview with anybody. It just was nothing there. So we've had a challenge of trying to run our program and recruit and to just continue to try to have some consistent success in building what we believe can be a high-level championship caliber program in the Big 12. We've done it with this cloud of just negative air the entire time. So once we got to this past Thursday, when I first heard that there was going to be some finality, at least at this point, to this case, I felt pretty confident that we had presented ourselves in a very positive light, that we knew that the situation was isolated and that there was no culpability on the university side or involvement of any other individuals in this situation. So I was hoping that Friday's announcement would be closure to this whole situation, to be perfectly frank. I had expectations that we would face some sanctions. I didn't know the degree to which they would sanction our school and program. But honestly, when I woke up Friday and got the news, I was pretty shocked. I was frustrated. I was disappointed. I was angry because I felt like it was a bridge too far. There's one thing to say we take every case and look at it on its own merits.
Sure.
It's another thing to have your actions show that that's not the case. And if you just look at the facts of our case, as it relates to even the actual report that the committee put out on Friday, it shows clearly there was no advantage gained competitively or otherwise by Oklahoma State University or the basketball program. There were 0 recruiting violations, which I think is a big deal here.
Yeah.
There was nothing gained by the university because of this activity that was going on. Nothing. We never played an ineligible player. We showed that on the front end, we had processes in place, that we were complying by the rules. There wasn't this, group of people kind of convoluting to break NCAA rules. There was no lack of institutional control. And essentially, when we found out that we had an individual involved in these actions, we did what the only thing you can do is separate yourself from that person. So, when we get from what we feel like is something pretty isolated to having this effect on so many people's lives, particularly kids' lives and their ability to be able to compete on the highest level of this sport, the college in college basketball, was pretty disappointing. And so we immediately started trying to think of how do we defend ourselves here? I mean, because I think any person who wants to go into any kind of detail can just read the report.
Yep.
And what I would imagine conclude, well, if you say they cooperated with you fully, you found no system of abuse, you found no lack of institutional control, you found no recruiting violations, you find that this was truly isolated to an individual who you say yourself was doing this in his own self-interest, then how do you then justify the level of penalties that was handed out? And so that's where we are now. But we certainly look forward to having our opportunity to appeal that decision and defend ourselves as aggressively as we can, and hopefully do something that we all say we want to do, which is stand up for players and give kids an opportunity to have success doing this, which, again, this decision, I believe, flies in the face of that.
Yeah, and so I just want to reiterate for anybody, you covered a lot of ground there. And tell me if these facts that I'm presenting to you are wrong. Now we're almost, relitigating the case here, but this is not your personal opinion. This is what the NCAA came to campus. They interviewed you. They looked through every piece of documentation that you guys have via yourself, your compliance department, your other assistant coaches, text messages, whatever. What they found was the assistant coach in question, who is no longer with your program, who you excused as soon as this situation arose. He took a fair amount of money, but none of it. This is me repeating what the NCAA found. Okay, so this is not your opinion. This is not my opinion. This is what the NCAA found. He did not give any of that money to a recruit. He did not give any of that money to a recruit's parents. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, $300 made its way to a player that was on your roster, I think 2 or 3 seasons ago, and that player was subsequently suspended. So correct me if I'm wrong. Is all of that accurate, that outside of a small monetary amount that was given to a player who was subsequently suspended, nothing went to another recruit, a player, a parent? And as you said, this is not your opinion. Oklahoma State did not gain anything by this. Again, this is what the NCAA told you guys.
Yeah, that's facts. That's the facts as were found. Those are the findings. There really wasn't much of a dispute on it even.
Interesting.
And we cooperated with them and told them, okay, if that's the case, then sure. Obviously, it's not the best behavior.
Yep.
And we agree that there should be a consequence to that, and there has been. No one got away with anything here. Mm-hmm. The person who was acting bad faced consequences. The person who on our team had involvement faced consequences as well. So it's not like we got away with this stuff and we're winning all these championships because we're recruiting these guys under the table and you got all kinds of people kind of involved in making this happen. No, none of it is true. None of it happened. So the facts as you presented them are the facts as they found and as they reported in their report.
Absolutely. I'm going to ask a tough question just because I want you to have the platform to answer it. You know, when another fan base hears a coach make a claim like yours, which it's not really a claim, it's facts. They'll say, come on, the coach had to know, you're sending him on the road, blah, 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 blah. What would you say to somebody? Because I think that's the natural reaction of every fan base, whether it's any of these, and I'm not going to name names. We know what other schools are under investigation, but the coach had to know, come on, they work together every day. What would you say to somebody that would say something like that?
Well, I'll say this, and this is just me because I'm pretty transparent about things.
Sure, let's do it.
Let's just assume I was, right? Let's just take that presumption. Mm-hmm. Why would I tell somebody to do something who works for me that's only going to benefit that person?
Sure. Absolutely.
And we're not going to get anything out of it. We're not going to get a recruit that can help us win, help me win, right? If that's me, then I would be directing that so that we can help the program, right?
Sure.
Not in the way that was presented here. This was for this individual and the opportunity to enhance their own personal situation. So, yeah, I'm sure people would assume that. It was what I heard immediately when this broke. Mm-hmm. This guy is involved. And I said, come on, let's sit down and talk. Tell me what you want to know. Mm-hmm. What can I show you? Because it's just who I am. And so I've never hid from anything. I've answered every question honestly and as open as I possibly could, considering the situation. But it's just, it wouldn't make much sense for me to risk our program's stake for someone to do something that doesn't benefit the program.
Makes sense. Makes perfect sense.
And there is no recruiting violation. And I would guess if you're thinking that the coach is sending this guy out to recruit players. That's not what happened.
Absolutely. And that makes perfect sense. And I'm glad I asked because that's a perfect answer to that question. You know, I know you did, when the news broke on Friday, you did a couple press conferences and all that stuff. What was your message to your current guys? Because, listen, we all know what's at stake here. You guys, for people who don't know, you started off really well last year. Your best player, 8 games, whatever it was into the season, catches mono. He's out for like 6 weeks. Obviously, when a team loses its best player, it's going to struggle. Then you guys, he comes back. His name's Isaac Likely. He's a point guard, and you guys take off again. And so, obviously, you factor that in with the excitement of a top 10 recruiting class centered around the number 1 player in America, Cade Cunningham, who, I'm sure you're probably the biggest fan in the world. I'm probably the second biggest fan in the world. He's an incredible talent. What has the message been to your guys, or what was it on Friday when this surreal moment happens in time, because as you said, there was no reason for you guys to expect for this to come down.
Yeah, it was the same as it's always been with our guys. We recruit and run our program first and foremost on respect and honesty, and you show that by how you deal with things when they're not easy.
Yep.
And those were not easy conversations. I called every guy on the roster and told them, hey, I'm disappointed. I understand if you are, rightfully so. I understand you may have some thoughts about what you want to do moving forward, because they do have an opportunity to transfer if they want and not have to sit out a year. And I told them basically that my responsibility was to support them. And I want to help them as they go through this, give them an opportunity to ask questions, and maybe I can provide some clarity on what the next steps looks like. I made it clear that I want this team to stay together, because I do think the combination of what you said, the returning core of the team that we had last year, along with the infusion of talent that we recruited this past season, will give us a chance to really move our program forward in a major way. And regardless of the outcome of the appeal, we feel like there's still a lot that this group could accomplish. And without trying to make them feel guilty if they wanted to change their minds, I did tell them, whatever you decide, whether it was Cade or Isaac Likely or Yornay or Keelan and Caleb Boone or anybody on our roster, if you feel in your heart and your family thinks that it's best for you to look at another option, I want to be here to support that too. I want these kids to enjoy this experience and not feel like a cloud is over them. So if they're going to be here, they need to do that all in, both feet, understanding that, yeah, there's going to be some noise, but we're going to persevere. And if they don't feel comfortable with that, I want them to get a place where they can do it with clarity.
How tough are those calls for you? Because for people who don't know, you were an assistant with the program before you were the head coach. I could be wrong, but I believe when you first offered Cade Cunningham, not only were you the first person to offer him a Power 5 scholarship, but you were an assistant that then transitioned to the head coach. Maybe you were a head coach by that point. I don't know. The point being, you personally have built real relationships with these kids. It's not as though the head coach is the guy who comes in and closes and doesn't, build that relationship early on in the process. I mean, for many of these guys, you were that assistant in that Oklahoma State polo, just trying to pitch your program, and they trusted you. They trusted you whether it was as an assistant or as a head coach. And now something like this happens. I know you want what's best for the kids, but how tough are those conversations? Because both sides have invested so much into each other and so much trust too.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's not easy at all. Those are difficult conversations to have, but they're necessary. I take a lot of pride in relationships on a personal level, in my job, in my personal life, and the people that I invest time in, I care deeply for,
Sure.
And I want to see them happy and successful. So, absolutely, when the time comes, I want all those guys to think about that relationship and how important it is to them. But I don't want it to overshadow what they feel like is best for them. And as you mentioned, Cade, I was an assistant coach when I first saw him. He was 14 years old, and he was just a tremendous talent. And as I think more and more about this decision, I'm more and more frustrated that this even has to be something of a consideration for him, a situation that he's got to maybe face some consequences for, as it was when he was a freshman in high school that this activity was going on.
Yeah.
And now he's going to have to be worried about the consequences of it when he's a freshman in college. Just doesn't square for me that you could really justify that level of punishment when, again, go back to the report. There was no advantage gained to the university. It's not like we had a bunch of kids driving around in nice cars because we had some boosters like that owned a car dealership giving them away.
Yep.
And sure, you could understand how you would need to be severely punished and face those consequences. But when you say, hey, this was a really narrow deal here, this is a really small problem, but you go back and you say, you can't be separating these. You're looking at them in totality. You're looking at all these cases as the same, and that's where you're basing your judgments on, and that's just not the way it's supposed to be.
I mean, I'll ask you really quick because you just brought it up. What is, and I know it's a fluid situation. We're recording here late in the week. This will run on Monday, but what is the situation with Cade? I mean, you were very vocal when these sanctions came out or when the announcement came out that you were going to support him, even if it meant going to another school, a rival. Obviously, he will have no shortage of professional options. I mean, is there any update? And frankly, are we at the point, I'm sure we already are, where other schools are at least trying to gauge interest and see where he may end up?
Oh, absolutely. I mean,
I'm not surprised.
Every player on my roster, and if you include him and the rest of the recruiting classes on the roster, they have options. He's got more options than probably anybody because of the professional element out there for him. But, there's no real update. We're still gathering information and trying to understand what the process is going to look like. And so for me, it's just about making sure there's clarity for him and how we're approaching it, and that we have honest conversations about what the options are. And I'm not in a position to try to sway him from doing what he wants to do. My job is to help him understand what each option means, right? And so there's an upside and maybe a little downside to every situation, whether it be overseas in Europe or on another continent, whether it be going to the G League, whether it be going to another college, or whether it be sticking with Oklahoma State, right? Every situation is going to present some positives and probably some negatives. Ours is the possibility that we lose an appeal and he can't play an NCAA tournament in his probably only year in college basketball, right? The other ones, I don't know. Maybe there's more negatives than positives.
Sure.
But I know there's a lot of reasons that he wanted to come to Oklahoma State and was excited about the opportunity to be in our program. And, a lot of those things still exist.
Well, and that's the last question about Cade, I promise, but that is one thing that, I've noticed in watching him, and I'm far from a recruiting expert, but I've seen him at 3, 4, 5 events, is that, he appears to be a leader. He appears to be somebody that people gravitate to. How do you balance, there are some really great options out there, but he clearly also has a real love for you, your staff. Obviously, we all know his brother's on staff, but as we just said, you were the first coach to believe in him in a way that nobody else did. So how do you balance, he's got a lot of great options, but heck, there's a real love for Oklahoma State here, and I don't want to say push him out the door. I don't know how to say what I'm trying to say, but Oklahoma State is still a great option, I feel like, for a kid that by all accounts wants to be there.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't said this much. I thought Cade was the best player in the country probably before anybody, including him.
Okay. Did
and
you tell him
our
that?
relationship really was built just off genuine appreciation for what I thought he could become if he had an intentional work ethic, and he does. This deal about his brother, although I don't want to discount it, it's real. I hired him, right? He's on my staff. He's a good friend. He works hard. He's a great dude. He's going to be a really good coach. But I didn't even have a conversation with Cannon, Cade's brother, for 2 years before. Sure. I mean, I recruited Cade for 2 years before I ever had one conversation with Cannon. My relationship with Cade is stronger than even my relationship with Cannon. And in fact, in this whole situation, I haven't talked to Cannon about Cade.
Okay.
I've talked to Cade about Cade.
Sure.
Because it's about him and it's not about his brother. His brother has his own deal that he's doing. And if he comes here, obviously that'll be a big part of them enjoying this experience together.
Yes.
And that'll be an awesome thing to see. But people who are just unwilling to accept that it wasn't just about, oh, I found out that there's a really good player and I thought his brother could help. No, that definitely didn't hurt us, right? It didn't hurt us that he's on our staff, but there was a lot of work done before that took place. And I'm just glad that the kid is getting all the accolades and attention that he deserves. Nobody's worked harder. And, I certainly hope that I have an opportunity to coach him. And if I don't, whatever he's doing, I'll be cheering for him to have great success.
Yeah. Like I said, if you're the number one fan, I'm the number two. Every time I've been around him, I mean, I truly mean it, is a gravitational pull. Feels a little over dramatic, but like, the kid's an awesome kid to be around. I think I hope he's a great ambassador for college basketball. I'll just say, I don't really care. I hope he's a great ambassador for college basketball. Ideally, I would think it would be with you guys and whatever. So let's just really quickly, what are the next steps for you guys? Because, we hear appeal, we see appeal, we don't know what it means. And I guess this is all part of, I don't know if re-recruiting is the right word, but, having these conversations with your players, is that there is still a process to be played out. And, I'll be honest, I was talking to your sports information director a day before we're doing this interview, and he said, look, other schools have appealed and been successful. We're not saying that we'll be the one, and we're not saying it's going to happen, but it has happened before. So for people who don't understand the process, what is the next step for you guys, and where do we go from here?
Yeah, people who are in positions of administrative duties above me obviously are putting a plan together on how to approach the appeal. We feel, like I said, because of the facts of the case, we have a strong stance to take. I don't know exactly what those details are at this point, but the truth is, this will take some time to play itself out. And so we're going to be as aggressive as we can be in defending our position and protecting our players. I think that's the ultimate message, is the impact of this decision on kids, most of which were like 15 and 16 years old, some as young as 14 at the time, is, again, a bridge too far. There was a much better way to adjudicate this case. And we think that hopefully whoever's on the appeal committee, or whatever that looks like, understands that we can't just take all the cases from the Southern District of New York and say, this is the minimum punishment that you can receive, because they're not all the same. They all have totally different elements. And ours, I think, is a great case of that.
Yeah, no, and I'll just say it so you don't have to. I think, based on, for people who saw the documentary, The Scheme, about this whole situation, I think it was maybe reported in real time different than how it actually went down. And I say that for every school, not just Oklahoma State. And if Oklahoma State was already on the lower end of all that to begin with, I'm just saying, that's my personal opinion. And, I'm allowed to have an opinion like everybody else. So anything else, I guess I would just ask it in a pie in the sky, best case scenario. First of all, I don't know if you're even allowed to say, when are your guys back on campus? When are they planning on coming back, or what's going on with that?
Yeah, we're not. That's kind of what's complicated this that much more, right? So the combination of, there are a lot of things at play at one time. So we got COVID, which made us essentially send everybody away.
Yep.
Almost like, go home. Don't stay on campus, please. Go to your home. Yeah. So we got 13 guys in essentially their hometowns. And so that's been difficult, because the way we normally communicate is we get together and we meet face to face, and we go have lunch, and we have team functions and stuff like that. So we haven't been able to do that since March. Then in the last 3 weeks, with all the racial tension in our country that's going on, really made things more complicated. We've had some really hard conversations. We've had to do those, just like we're doing this, virtually via Zoom. And it's hard to you want to hug your guys. You want to put your arms around them and tell them, man, listen, I understand how frustrated this is to see, but we'll be okay. And then to now have to deal with this on top of that during this time when you can't get with them face to face, really complicated this last week for our staff. In addition to, I could have 13 guys walk in my office and say, you know what, hey, I don't think this is for me. And there's really nothing I can do, considering the rule says you can go without having to sit out. So there's no penalty there. And there's a recruiting dead period going on. So if I had all those guys come in and say, if I had 6 guys come in, then I can't go replace them.
Wow.
So it's been a challenge for sure. So our hope is that the Big 12 allows our guys to start voluntary activities on July the 6th.
Oh, wow.
So we're still close to a month away from that even.
Jeez.
And so, there's a lot of things to consider as we go through this. And I hope that, these conversations continue to go well. I don't anticipate losing 13 guys, but it's a possibility. And the more time away they are, the more opportunities for other people to influence this thought processes. So I'll stick strong with our relationship, and honesty and respect is at the top of the list on our priority list. And so we'll just try to do the right things by them, and hopefully we get them back. Hopefully we get them all back. But the ones we get back, we're going to do everything we can to make it a successful experience next year.
We don't have to name names, but we obviously talked about Cade earlier. Have you gotten any indication either way that guys are interested in pursuing other things, interested in coming back, or is it too early on that?
It's probably too early. I mean, I've got a couple guys who feel very confident in coming back no matter what.
Great.
That gives me some sense of peace, because that shows that they believe in the program, but also me. They believe in what we're doing and how they're being treated. So it's pretty cool, man, to feel that, and hopefully we get as many of them wanting to do that as possible, and give ourselves a chance to, no matter what we're faced with, to still have an enjoyable and successful season next year.
All right, very last question. Pie in the sky, everything goes well, everybody comes back. Give us this. I'm a glasses half full guy. So give us the scouting report on the 2020-2021 Cowboys if things, if you have the roster that you were intending to have all along.
Well, we play in the best basketball conference in the country, and we think it'll be that way again next year.
It'll be good. Yeah.
Kansas is always good, really deep. They'll be a top 5 team, I would imagine. Texas will be top probably 10. They've got everybody back, added a top 10 player in the country coming in. Tech, Baylor, they've been really good here last several years. West Virginia is always good. So we'll have opportunities to show how good we are through playing Big 12 basketball. And we think we'll have a chance to be really, really competitive, hopefully compete at that level for some sort of championship, even if it's not postseason, some regular season opportunities. But all things considered, I think this is a team that can make a deep, deep run in the NCAA tournament if we're given the opportunity.
I'm keeping my fingers crossed, man. I really am. I appreciate you making some time, kind of clarifying for people that don't understand what's going on, don't understand what has happened. I think this was really insightful, and so I appreciate you making some time, and we'll keep fighting the fight. We'll do what we can, man. You tell me where I got to show up and when. I'm there. So
I appreciate it, Aaron. Look forward to the opportunity to speak again.
All right. Thank you.